And then the last thing is psychobiotics, right? Psychobiotics are probiotic bacteria that have a way of modulating the gut-brain neurological axis. One of the key ways that they do it is by shunting the inflammation that occurs in the enteric nervous system that also then translates into the central nervous system. Now, the psychobiotic Bifidobacterium longum 1714, it's a very unique strain. It's the most well-studied psychobiotic there is. I think there's about 12 published papers on it, on things like mood disorders, anxious behaviors, cortisol release, and brainwave function. This is where it gets really interesting. So it's been shown that when you consume the psychobiotic, and I know exactly the mechanism, we can explain it if there's time, but when you consume the psychobiotic, what happens is it not only reduces the inflammation that your neurological system is going through if you're in that sympathetic state, it also blunts some of the cortisol response. So the cortisol response is not as intense, bringing cortisol down at the end of that flight or fight curve. It also shifts the brainwave activity from high frequency brainwaves like beta waves to lower frequency brainwaves like gamma waves, which is what people really want to achieve, or sorry, theta waves, which is what people really want to achieve through meditation, right? The biggest benefit of long-term meditative practice is the ability to tap into low frequency brainwaves when you need to. This probiotic does it for you in less than 30 days at the same equivalent level that deep meditation does. Right. It's a probiotic bacteria that can change brainwave activity. This is a wonderfully published study that was done by Paul Ank, a professor of psychology and physiology in Germany. And what he showed, and this was such an interesting study, he has this massive machine that you sit in, and the participants are playing games in the machine while the machine is reading your brainwave activity, right? So this is a really interesting setup, because what he does is he puts you in there and you think you're playing with other participants, and it's a ball throwing game. It's a simple game. But the way it's set up is that the other two participants that are actually computers aren't throwing you the ball. And so it creates this massive amount of social anxiety in people, right? Which is so fascinating to see. And so while they're starting to get socially anxious because they're not being included in the game, they're somehow being excluded and all that, they start all these childhood traumas come up. You start to see the brainwave activity go crazy in many people, where their beta waves and all that are firing, and this cortisol levels are going crazy. You put the same individuals on 30 days of a psychobiotic, you put them back in that scenario, and you do the same thing, then instead of cortisol going up and the beta waves firing, theta waves kick in, and this area of the brain called the coping center. The coping center of the brain is a part of the brain that goes, yeah, this doesn't really bother me. I don't need to worry about this. The coping center starts firing up, and then they're just relaxed. They're like, whatever, they're just watching the game playing.
That's amazing.
It's a complete shift in who they are in a 30-day period through a probiotic bacteria.
Incredible.
Absolutely mind-boggling.
So coupling that with actual meditation, what are your thoughts on listening to like binaural beats or 6 hertz, sounds to induce that theta? Like, imagine that practice of all 3 of those things working together. I would imagine that's.
Oh yeah,
I'm going to disappear for 30 days, do that, and come back. Come back as the Buddha.
Totally. No, I think that's wonderful. So when you combine the gut-brain, approach with those practices, then you're going to be in amazing shape, right?
Yeah.
Then you're going to have a whole other perspective on how the world works.
Right. And then you developed a product called ZenBiome. So to me, seems like the best possible way to get, because it's not just the psychobiotic that's in it. There's some other things in that, some other ingredients in that are helpful. So maybe touch on that a little bit.
Yeah. So there's B vitamins in there. And part of the reason for B vitamins is they're really important for synthesizing some of these neurotransmitters that are needed. The second thing, the third thing that's in there is saffron. And saffron is fantastic, right? So saffron calms down the neurological system, helps with the synthesis of neurotransmitters. It helps modulate some of the receptor binding of these neurotransmitters as well. So there's a lot of benefit to saffron, and it pairs well with what the psychobiotic is doing. I can explain briefly about what the psychobiotic does, which is so fascinating. right? So here's how it was discovered. It's actually discovered and developed by the APC, which is the largest microbiome research institute in the world. It's in Cork, Ireland. It's attached to University College Cork in
Mhm.
Ireland, and that's where the psychobiotic revolution really started. It started with Professor Ted Dinan and a research group there, and that's the guy that wrote the Psychobiotic Revolution and actually coined the term psychobiotic.
Okay.
So I got a chance to work with them for a few years on this project of bringing this product to the commercial setting. So what they were looking at is what is the impact of the microbiome on anxiety and mood disorders. And so they took a number of people in Ireland, including very jolly, happy old Irish women, right? And they were comparing the microbiomes for people that slept really well and had very balanced moods versus people that did not. And they found that all the people that they found that slept well, had very balanced mood, had high levels of this unique strain called Bifidobacterium longum 1714. Those types of bacteria that were so important for the development of our brain in utero continues for the rest of our lives to protect our brain
Hmm.
from things like anxiety, depression, inflammation, and so on, right? And so what we see is because we are dysbiotic and our environment is toxic and almost everything we expose ourselves to kills these types of bacteria, that not only is it leading to a dramatic increase in anxiety, depression, neurological disorders and all that, it's also leading to a dramatic increase in neurological development in children. This
Mhm.
may be part of the reason why we're seeing higher rates of spectrum disorders and birth defects in the neurological system. And it goes hand in hand with increases in anxiety, depression, all that in adults, right? So it's such an important missing piece in this whole
Incredible.
puzzle.
And, so taking these strains of probiotic or psychobiotics, people are going to want them because the immediate effects are they're going to have
Mhm.
like depression, anxiety, but it sounds like they're also protecting themselves from longer term neurodegenerative diseases as well.
Absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
So I fortunately don't have anxiety. I actually had about a number of years ago that I tackled with a multi-pronged approach and was able to get it under control within a few
Mhm.
months. But since then I've not had any issue, but I still take psychobiotics predominantly for the neurological inflammation that
Mhm.
it protects against, right? And you need those mechanisms to continue to protect your brain.